The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondel.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. This is Dave Hondel. We are so happy to have our guest on tonight. He's a star of reality TV's Temptation Island. He's also an accomplished actor who has a movie premiering tonight on Lifetime TV entitled Hider in My House. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Thomas Gipson. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Thank you, Dave, for having me. I'm super happy to be here. I'm excited to be on your show, and thanks for extending the invitation.
Of course. We're so happy to have you on as well. And, you know, I know I mentioned this, and people know you from Temptation Island with, your girlfriend Chelsea. And, being on reality TV, I guess a lot of people, have questions, I guess, about being on reality TV. Is it... is it real? You're putting yourself out there, and what was that process like about you guys being on that show? How did it start? And was it difficult to make that decision to really put yourself and your relationship out there to everybody in the world, really? Yeah,
well, that's a great question. So many people ask me, is it real? And it's somewhere in the middle. It's obviously real as far as they're real people that they are casting in these shows. And it's not scripted. There's no, planned story, but they take kind of your storyline that you already have as a couple, the situation you're in, and then they kind of mold the narrative and sort of guide it gently to make it entertaining.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of both. It's real, but also narrative guided. How Chelsea and I got into it, we were knee deep in quarantine, about 7 to 8 months in at that point. It was the fall of 2020, and neither of us, had been working. And this Temptation Island was, I believe, the first network show that got greenlit. So when Chelsea was reached out to by the production team, neither of us had anything else going on. We weren't auditioning. Everything was just closed. This was pre-vaccine. So it was sort of serendipitous in a way, because had I still been acting and doing things, I wouldn't have entertained it, because reality TV was never an interest of mine. And I wouldn't want to be away for that long, a month and a half of not being able to pursue acting and take on acting jobs.
Right.
But because we hadn't been working, and because the world was shut down and we'd been cooped up in our apartment for so long, the idea of going to Hawaii and socializing when it had just been us not being able to interact with the rest of the world was a really compelling idea. So they reached out to her. We were actually, I believe, in Sacramento, driving to the Sequoia Forest, and we pulled over because my reception was getting shoddy. She took the call. We said we would get back to them the next day. And then we binge watched the first season, because I had never heard of the show before. And after watching it, I just was like, let's do it. It's fun. We're going to be partying, and it'll be good for, we can use this to kind of help advance our careers. Chelsea's also an actress, musician, and entertainer. So we used it as a vehicle to kind of just, help us and get us out of quarantine for a little bit.
Right.
So that was how that happened. And it was, what was interesting too is that it was a recast because of quarantine. They had already cast the show, and then they had to stop production. And then when they started it back up, they had to do some recasting.
Sure.
I don't know exactly why, but they reached out to some new people, and that was how we got the opportunity. And it was a pretty fast-paced but rigorous audition process, where we had to do multiple interviews, Zoom interviews, do funny videos of us dancing in bathing suits, and just, showcasing our personalities to book it.
When it all came out and the edited version came out, was there ever regrets that, maybe we shouldn't have done this, or did you guys just, kind of run with it and say, glad we took it and we ran with it, and we're glad we did?
I mean, well, hindsight's 20/20. Looking back, there's things I think we would have gone in with a different maybe mindset, a little more prepared.
Yeah.
Again, I kind of approached it as a vacation.
Yeah.
And I think, now knowing what I know, I think I would have went in with a little more pragmatism and more kind of just a little bit smarter. But at the time I didn't know, and I didn't really, even though I binge watched the first season, I should have done a little more research into what went into it. I kind of honestly thought I was going to go there and just be hanging out. And if I wanted to read a book, I could read a book. If I wanted to go to sleep, I could go to sleep. But it's not that. It's very, much more structured. You're not allowed to have books. You're not allowed to go to sleep until everything's wrapped.
Right.
So it was much more of like a working set than reality. So had I known that, I think I would have went in a little bit differently,
more prepared. Yeah. And speaking of quarantine and COVID, a lot of people in the arts like yourself and Chelsea, I mean, a lot of it was shut down, like you said, and just your acting, not being able to audition and do shows. And I mean, did you find it harder to kind of maintain your craft a little bit during that time, or did you feel that it was more you were able to more kind of prepare for an audition, I guess, when it was opened up again? Did that give you time to really prepare, or was it more detrimental to you?
I tried to stay very active during quarantine. I did a Zoom play with a few fellow actors that we rehearse on a regular basis, and we filmed it and created this really cool, Zoom theatrical performance. And I would take with my acting coach, Sheila Gray, who's incredible. She started doing these Zoom classes every Wednesday. So I started taking those, and she still continued to do them. And I still take them. So I try to be as active with my craft as possible, just from a different, from Zoom instead of in person, which there's definitely drawbacks, but there is something unique about it. And it is with acting, everything's self-tapes now.
Right.
So knowing how to act over Zoom, I think actually feeds your self-tape skills.
Yeah, for sure. And, and talk about the, Hider in My House. I mean, that's, obviously tonight it premieres on Lifetime. Talk about the process of how you got that role, and also, the feeling around the movie and what we can expect as an audience.
Sure. So speaking of self-tapes, that was a self-tape, and it was 2 rather comprehensive scenes. They were each about 5-6 pages each. So it was about a 12-page audition, 11 or 12 pages, if I remember correctly. And, what was nice was that I've had more time because when it's self-tapes, you have a little more time to kind of massage it and work on it and craft a performance and create a character a little more than when you're going in the room and you kind of only maybe have 1, if you're lucky, 2 opportunities to do the scene. And if that first take you don't like, and they say, thank you, bye.
Right.
It's like, if I had one more chance. With self-tapes, you get that extra chance. You can do that first take and say, I'll watch it back and I'll get ideas. I almost kind of like, I direct myself in a way.
Right.
And so my own editor, I'm watching, and I'm like, I like this part, but I want to add this moment at the end. I want to have this realization, or I want to, this character, I think actually he should be a little bit more sympathetic or something. And I'll find it and I'll kind of mold it. And living with my girlfriend, Chelsea, like she's incredible because she will help me and she's patient with me, and she'll, we help each other in this audition process. And being able to take the time really helped with auditioning for Hider in My House, which was originally, fun fact, had a different title.
Oh, okay.
It was originally called What Lies Behind the Walls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was the working title, yeah.
It was the working title, and then they ended up changing it to Hider in My House. And but yeah, when I auditioned, it was with Ricky Massler did the casting, and she's great. She always, I think she picks great scenes that contrast. So I was able to kind of display the different sides of the character, and and so I got the call a little while after I had done the audition, where I had to jog my memory
Yeah.
Once I got my manager contacted me that they wanted to hire me, I was like, wait, what is this again? I had forgotten about it.
Yeah. You had to kind of refresh your memory a little bit.
Yeah, I had to go back into the archives, and I was like, oh yes, I remember this audition.
Now, when you get a role, let's say the role that you had in this production, this movie, how do you research that role? Because obviously, it's if it's a fictional character, whether it's a true life character from the past. I mean, how do you because I know actors have different, some people journal, and some people maybe research a similar character, I guess, from the past. How do you get into that character, and what is your process, I guess, for doing that?
It really does depend on the role and the character, how I'll prepare. If it's a character that I feel is that I can easily relate to, and then there's not much of a huge lifestyle jump, then it's more about I'm figuring out to relate more to the circumstance of what's going on in the story, and how I can relate to that circumstance and what the character's feeling and the journey they're going on, the arc from beginning to end. If it's a character that I feel is very different from me, different upbringing, maybe they came from wealthy parents, Ivy League, or just a completely different profession that plays a significant role. There was one film I almost got, it fell short, but the character was an EMT.
Okay.
And that's something that it was integral to the story, that he was an EMT, constantly. That was his day job, and it was in the film. And I felt I needed to, if I had to book that, I needed to know what it is to be an EMT. So some certain films, another one that I actually did book where I was a bike mechanic, I went to a bike shop and just sort of mirrored or, just watched someone working, just to kind of get the feel of how they carry themselves, how they handle the job. In case in the scene I'm handling a bike, I want to make it look like this is something I've done. This is a job I've had, and I look like someone that's actually doing it, not someone pretending to do it.
Right.
So that's my way in. But once I figure that out, then it's right back to, okay, the circumstance. How do I connect to what's going on to this character and do it truthfully? Because my background is Meisner training. I went to William Mesker Studio in New York City. Okay. And it's all sourced in truth.
Yeah.
My acting teacher at the time, Terry Knickerbocker, he always said, he had one rule, and it was no bullshit.
Yeah.
Everything had to be authentic. So I always try to use that as my guiding light. And if I feel that I'm pushing or I'm forcing, then it's like, all right, you need to connect to this, find out why, where's the disconnect, and then connect, fix it.
Yeah. And where are you from originally? Just out of curiosity. New Jersey?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The reason I asked that is because, regionally, obviously everybody has an accent. So you ever had a part that you had to change your accent, and how did you do that? Did you have to get a voice coach, or how does that work?
I've done a lot of vocal lessons and voice lessons. I had to work to sort of limit and reduce my own regional accent, because I used to it probably is coming out a little bit. I am on vacation right now, so it might be slipping out here and there. But yeah. I worked a lot to filter it out. I'm always impressed with actors that, like, say Nicole Kidman, that she'll have her accent in normal life and then can just turn it off when she's acting.
Yeah.
For me, it's a little bit, I prefer to just speak in a neutral tone, and then if I need an accent, I work on it. And for me, it's I'll go over the script, and I find that whatever accent I'm using, how to pronounce all the words, and I just run when I'm memorizing the lines, how to say it with that accent.
Yeah. Now, if there was a dream role that you could play, no matter what it is, what role would that be, and why?
It's between John Wick and Neo.
Okay.
I find I love both of them, and they're both, I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but the fact that they're both played by Keanu Reeves, I feel The Matrix, I love the scale of the film. I love the original Matrix is my top 3 films of all time.
Yeah.
So I just love that story. I love the significance of it. I love the character and his the importance of the role he plays and just the overall scale of it. And then John Wick, which is it's not about the world, it's about his world. The first one starts with his dog getting killed, but it's sort of the same thing in a way. Instead of saving the whole world, it's about him, like honor. There's this code of assassins, and it's just the odds are against him, and I just love that storyline. I love the action. I've done some action, but nothing on that near that scale. That's a dream role for me, to do something with that kind of physicality and action and storytelling and the visuals, the way it looks. That's what I want to do.
Now, when you're growing up in New Jersey, did you ever think that this would be your career? And I guess, when did you catch the acting bug?
Much, much later in life. I was one of those kids that never did any sort of theater training. I didn't do any drama school. I had, in my family, my parents were teachers, so the idea of acting was never something in that was visible to me.
Right.
So I went to school. I got a degree in psychology. I graduated from college. I started working in finance. I got a job at Merrill Lynch. I was working there during the financial crisis, and it wasn't until I didn't change careers until I was over 30.
Wow.
I didn't start acting until 6 years ago.
Really?
So yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was very, very late. Change in the community. I went to school for it. I put myself through school as I was still working in finance. I would go to night school in Manhattan, and I did the 2-year conservatory program at William Esper. And when I graduated from that, and I felt I had the tools to compete on a professional level, then I quit my job and started pursuing it full time. I did it for about 2 years in New York, and then I packed up my car and I drove out to California and started acting in California. And then that was 3 years ago, and then I did it for about a year, and then everything shut down.
Yeah.
And so it's been a crazy journey, but it had a very late start. So for anyone listening that is questioning, is it possible to change careers, near 30 or I'm over 30, even if you're older, I don't think with the beautiful thing about acting is that there is no age limit.
Right.
You're just acting at that age,
right,
or hopefully, if you look younger, you act younger.
yeah, correct.
There's roles for every age group, and it may be harder for certain, at certain ages and depending on genders and stuff like that. But ultimately, if you are passionate about it and you love it, and that's what happened with me. I was working at Merrill Lynch for quite a long time, and I just hit a point where I just knew that this was not what I was meant to do for the rest of my life.
Right.
It's not what I wanted to do, and I didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. I didn't have that direction yet, but a part of me, I guess, I always loved films. I loved movies.
Yeah.
So I just decided to try a summer intensive at Stella Adler, a different school.
Yep.
And I did a 10-week summer intensive there, and the very first class, getting up in front of the classroom, no clue what I was doing, but just performing brought me to life. Yeah. And I realized this is what I need to be doing. This is where I should be putting my energy. Yeah. And from that moment, I made the decision to pursue it and make it my career. And it's been a long journey. I'm still on the journey, I'm not nowhere near accomplished the things I want to accomplish. And there's so much work I want to do that I plan on doing. But it's hard work, and I made that decision. And if you are serious about it and you are passionate about it, you love it, then it just takes dedication and hard work.
Talk about the support. What did your family think when you packed up your car and drove to California? What did your friends and family think? Did they think you were crazy, or did they jump on board and support you 100%? I
know a lot of them thought I was crazy, even the ones that were supportive. probably in the back of their minds thought, this guy's crazy. He's over 30 years old. He's trying to be an actor in California. But I knew that I could do it. I just treated it like I took the same work ethic that I had in the corporate world.
Yep.
And I said, all right, well, if you apply this to acting, you'll find success.
Yeah.
And I treated it like a job. I get up early and I made a plan. You build a house one brick at a time. I just would always take steps to make sure I was progressing.
Yeah.
And my parents, my mom especially, my mom was just so supportive. She cried when I left. She was super sad, but happy for me. She's my biggest fan.
Yeah.
She loves everything I do.
Yeah.
I couldn't ask for a better supportive mother.
Yeah. That's amazing. The other thing I wanted to ask you, I mean, this is something that I've always wanted to ask an actor or somebody that's in the public eye like yourself, but how do you handle criticism? Because I know that, people out there that are getting into this medium, you gotta have a thick skin, right? I mean, you gotta be able to take criticism, because as many people as are praising you and saying you're doing a great job and what a great performance, and there's going to be those people out there that are going to leave negative comments for whatever reason. So talk about that. How do you handle that? And do you have that support system that you can take that and just kind of brush it aside? Or is it something that really, bothers you, I guess?
I think there's grains. There's grains of truth somewhere in the middle. You have people that are, like you said, that will, oh, you're great. They say how much they love you. And then you have people that are hating. And I try to learn. I try not to take either not too personal. You know? I feel I'm trying to be polite. I feel if people are hating, it's more about them than me. If you're going to express hatreds to someone you don't know,
right?
There's probably, they're probably dealing with stuff, and that's a form of them to vent and let it out. So I don't really engage. And I find, when it's obvious like that, I don't take it personally. Yeah. I do try to find if there's some sort of criticism that is constructive, and that's, I think we need, as an artist, you need to be a very good self-critic, which is hard to do.
Right.
But being able to truthfully examine your work and see how you can improve upon it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I find as an artist, you can either more commonly be way too hard on yourself, because we are usually our harshest critics.
Right.
But also sometimes we if we do like something, we kind of glorify it and you got to be able to step back and see it with honest eyes and see, okay, this is good, but I can improve upon it in this way.
Right.
And sometimes comments from strangers, they have that perspective.
Yeah.
And if I can get that from them, and I can see, okay, if a lot of people are seeing this, maybe there's something to it. Let me try to look at it from that point of view.
That lens, yeah. But 5 years down the road, where do you want to be as an actor, producer, director? Where do you want to be, I guess? Where do you see yourself?
Still acting, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel I do produce a little bit. I've begun producing. I want to take that. I like having that hand in the filmmaking process. I could see myself directing maybe 15, 20 years from now. But 5 years from now, certainly acting, hopefully I would love to be on some sort of great drama show, like a Breaking Bad or Ozark type show,
right,
where it has high stakes and the character development builds over multiple seasons. Something like that is where I hope I'm doing something like that.
Yeah. What's your main advice that you would have for a young actor, I guess, from your 6 years, I guess, in the business? I mean, what would you tell somebody just getting started that you wish you maybe would have done differently, or just starting out, or what's that one piece of advice that you would give somebody? Craft.
Work on the craft. I think so many people don't take it seriously enough, especially with acting. If you wanted to be a piano player or a violinist, you would take a lot of lessons. You wouldn't assume you can just get up on stage and play the violin for an audience. You
Right.
would practice and work and hone your craft. And with acting, there are some people that can do it without training, but 99% of people, you almost have to unlearn what the defenses we build over our life growing up that you have to in the real world. You need to learn to break those down, to be vulnerable, to let yourself open up, to feel, to know that it's safe to feel. And that comes from, for me, I know it came from being in a classroom, working with other actors, working on scenes. You need to practice, because you've only experienced so many things in your own life. And there's so many stories that you're going to be telling that deal with things that you've never experienced. And you have to work that muscle of how to connect to it, how to understand. And it's living life, experiences, reading. I mean, I try to do a lot of, I think as an actor, your instrument is your mind, body, voice, soul, your being. And so I'm always trying to read books, to watch art, to meditate a lot, do vocal exercises, and just try to keep my instrument in shape, working out. And if you do that, because your body is your instrument as an actor, so you have to take care of it. You have to be able to perform. And the more flexible your instrument is and the more things you're able to do, the more opportunities you'll be able to take advantage of.
Yeah, that's well said. The other thing about being an actor, and obviously you're working with different directors, and how do you align yourself with them?
Well, I enjoy really getting into it and talking about it. In the process of discussing it and talking about it, ideas come to me and it becomes alive. So I like when I have a director that likes to work like that. Yeah. But a lot of times, unfortunately, with time constraints, it's a luxury you don't have. So with a lot of indie films, I've had that ability to really, let's dive into this. Let's really figure out how we can make each scene the best it can be. If you're not fortunate enough to have that situation where everything's time pressed and you don't have the ability to really sit down with the director and talk about each scene, which is not that common, I do what I can, and I try to pick, if I can get a question in, or if something I feel I can get some clarity on, I'll go to the director with that. What do you think about this? And see, the more collaborative he or she is, the better. But as the actor, you're just facilitating their vision. So you have to be able to take what they give you, and it may not be much. They might have so much going on that they're only able to give you a little crumb of what you're looking for, but you got to be able to take that crumb and say, okay, what can I do with this? How can I make this interesting, compelling to watch? How can I make this character fascinating in this scene that seems to be very, it's only a few lines, it's out at the dinner table. What's interesting about this? That's your job as the actor, to find how can this be interesting?
Yeah.
You have to do that. You can't just expect everyone else to make it interesting. You just say your lines. No, that's, right. Anyone can just say lines. Be an interesting person to watch.
As a producer too, yourself, does that help you, I guess in your acting? I've asked this before, some of the other actors that are also producers, because I think, if you're behind the camera in any aspect, I think personally it would help you in front of the camera. Am I overthinking that, or is that the case?
Absolutely. And that's something I want to get more of. I want more being able to see behind the camera, just knowing what a 50 millimeter lens, just knowing what that frame means. So if I hear the DP saying what lens they're using, and I know, oh, okay, so this is going to be a medium shot. Now I know how much range how much movement I can do.
Sure.
Whereas if it's a close up, now it's okay. This is going to be more about subtlety,
facial expressions. Yeah.
Exactly. So having that knowledge of, without even having to ask them, I can just hear him, oh, we're going to swap this lens out. And I know what lens they're using. Now I know what my playground is.
Right. Exactly.
So the more you know from the other side of the camera, it can only help inform what you do in front of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that's well said. Now, I always ask this question of all my guests, and I'm going to ask you as well. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to walk away with when they think of Thomas Gipson?
If I could inspire others to take chances and to pursue what they love, whatever that may be, then I would be happy with that legacy. I feel life is so short, and so many people get caught up in living a life that it's not what they envisioned. It's what they just felt society or their parents or whatever kind of molded them into, and they just go along. And it's like, no, you can live a life that you want. You can pursue something you want to do. And if there's a few people that actually get that message and change their life because they were inspired by me, I'm happy with that.
That's amazing. Thank you for that, Tom. Again, Hide Her in My House tonight, premiering on Lifetime TV, so everybody check that out. I know I'm going to. Your beautiful girlfriend, Chelsea, I know you guys are on vacation right now, so enjoy that. And, again, thank you so much for being on the show, and hopefully we'll have you back again sometime. So thanks again, Tom.
Dave, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much to our audience for listening to the Stage Door Show on iHeart Radio. Your support means everything. And always remember to support your local independent artists.